What's up, guys? It's pure political pandemonium here. One take, no script. We're 2 weeks out from the 2022 midterms, and I'm going to throw my Senate midterm prediction out here for everyone. We can discuss in the comments any agreements, disagreements, anything like that. This is kind of going to roll a similar way as my previous video in terms of margins. For example, anything that would be considered solid red would be anything that would be a 10% victory or larger. Likely red or likely Democrat would be a 5 to 10% victory. Anything that's a lean state would be from 1 to 5, and anything that's a tilt, which honestly could go either way, would be anything that would be within 1%. So to start off, we're going to go with just the states that, it's no real competition there. It's clearly one-sided. So we're going to start here and fill out these, both for Oklahoma and Alaska as well. Alaska's Senate is there's a lot going on with it, but no matter which way it ends up going, it's going to end up going for the Republicans. And then additionally, for the Democrat solid states, we're going to go through here. And this isn't entirely filled out just yet, but I am going to discuss Florida real quick. Marco Rubio, he's got it in the bag. He's been around for a while, and people down there are a pretty big fan of him. He's, there's some things that have this thing as going likely, maybe 8 or 9 points, which I'm not going to discredit those. I'm sure that that's very possible, but I think he'll get it by well over 10. Additionally, Chuck Grassley, who's, about as old as the Senate itself, he'll probably end up sticking around as well. So I think that one would end up being pretty solid, if not likely, but still, solid likely. There's not too big of a difference there. Then for likely states for the Democrats, we're going to start off. We're going to have Washington. This one is another one that's similar to, let's say, Iowa or Florida, for example. It might get closer than most years. There is movement toward a red wave. I don't think it's going to get closer than usual. I think it'll be probably around an 8 or 9 point win for the Democrats there. Colorado, probably about the same. And then moving into Ohio, J.D. Vance, his debate performance, I think it was well enough. He's going up against Tim Ryan, who is a state representative there. And Tim Ryan got caught up for making a couple comments about Trump supporters. Overall, I mean, could they have, the Republicans have picked a better candidate? Could the Democrats have picked a better candidate? Yes and yes. But in terms of Ohio, just for the last 8 years or so, trending more toward conservatives and going to Trump by 8 points both elections, for example. The governor race is going to be a lot further apart. I think it's Mike DeWine who's running. He's going to end up winning by about 15. So that's not really any competition there. But Ohio, I think, will end up going by probably about 6 points. Because J.D. Vance is not as popular, but he's popular enough, and he's popular enough to get the base out. Another likely state would be Wisconsin. I think Senator Johnson, he's doing pretty good there. Wisconsin's a state that is leaning more toward conservatives in recent years, despite being pretty split down the middle largely because of just the momentum and just national shifting in the last 2 years. The Republicans have it on their side. Anytime that there's a midterm right after a president has been elected, in most cases, it's a wave year for whoever's the opposite party. And this year, in many ways, is going to be reflecting on people's opinions of the current administration. So just based off of approval ratings for Joe Biden, which I'll put them up on the screen, they've improved from what they were during the summer, but he's still underwater. He's going to stay underwater, and it's probably not going to get too much better for him. I honestly think that his peak in terms of approval rating is probably 43%, 44%. I don't think he can really get much higher than that. Another state that I think will go probably about 5 points or so it could be lean, it could be likely. I'll throw it in as a likely state is North Carolina. I think Bud's got this. I don't think it's that close. I mean, really, I'm making this video specifically on the 5 races that we have left here. because of Kamala Harris existing as the tiebreaker, Republicans will need to have 51 seats to keep a majority. Democrats only need 50.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
So Republicans here are currently 2 away. They need to get 2 of these 5 races. And, you know, a lot of these could go either way. I am going to go with the only state that I think would be of a lean margin for the Democrats, and that's New Hampshire. I think Maggie Hassan's got this in the bag. It's going to be pretty close. Most of the polls, which I can pull up, have her up by about 3, which right here, for example, the Emerson poll, which Emerson is a pretty good poll against Bolduc. She's up by 3 consistently. I don't know if I can see any more on this page of what's coming out recently. I can go to the next page and check it out. So this one's up by 7. I don't know if it's that accurate there for that one. Emerson is a really good poll, has it up by 3. Hassan's up by 6 in this one. So in many ways, I think it would average probably about 3 or 4 points, probably. So I think that New Hampshire would end up going for the Democrats there. We're down to 4 states here. And one state that I think I'm probably going to go by the order of how close I believe these states are going to be. So this one's about a 3-4 point victory for Maggie Hassan. I think that the next state to go, which would actually be a flip, would be Nevada for Adam Laxalt. So I think that would end up being, actually I'm going to run through and put it. I think it's going to probably be about a 1 to 2 point victory there. Even 538, which has not been too accurate in terms of being favorable toward the left as opposed to the right, even they have it that he wins by about 0.5 on here. They give him a 53% chance of winning. So the fact that they have even admitted that when, for example, in 2020, they didn't think that Trump could even win North Carolina or Ohio, they even have him winning Nevada here. So I think that, for example, is another thing that's backing him up. Nevada's seen major shifts in terms of just the last 2 years. We're going to check. I'm going to make another video about the governor's race, which is also a pretty good discussion there. And it's similar to the Senate race here, where I think the conservatives are going to have a pickup. So to check that out, we got a 1 to 2 point victory there for Adam Laxalt. And then we're down to just 3 races. So Republicans only need 1 more seat. And honestly, they're going to get it. The only issue really is from where. There's 3 states remaining, and they honestly could go either way, but I think the Republicans are bound to win at least 1. To discuss specifics, Pennsylvania, I think, would probably go to Dr. Oz by probably around 1 point or so, maybe 1.5. So I'm going to put it as a lean margin as opposed to a tilt margin, but I think the line's very, very slim there. John Fetterman is not a good candidate.
And the Eagles are so much better than the Eagles. Send me to Washington, D.C. so I can work with Senator Casey, and I can champion the Union way of life in in D.C. My name is John Fetterwoman.
For one thing, he's not really in a position where he should be running, and I do feel bad for the guy because he had a stroke back in May, I believe, and ever since then, you can tell that things just aren't quite right. He is, so we're currently 2 weeks out. It's Tuesday, October 25th. I know there's going to be a debate tonight, which I don't expect to go too well for him.
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I do support fracking.
Okay.
You know, you can't have someone that's in the Senate unable to really understand what people are saying when you're talking to them. You know, you're not going to be in situations when you're always having closed captioning for you, so I don't think that it's going to be very favorable for him. The left would have been much better off nominating a more moderate candidate like Connor Lamb, but unfortunately they did go the more extreme route. John Fetterman is a self-proclaimed socialist or democratic socialist, which is essentially the same thing. And it's just not going to bode well for them. This would be a Republican hold because I believe it's Pat Toomey who is retiring this year. So it's going to be a Republican hold. And right there, we already have 51 seats there. We're down to just Georgia and Arizona, which I'm going to tackle Georgia first. For one thing, Georgia's a bit different, where if a candidate doesn't reach 50%, they go into a runoff election afterwards. And I think it's pretty safe to say that there is going to be a runoff. I don't think either candidate can reach 50%. So there's going to be a runoff, and when that runoff occurs, which I believe will be in December, I do think Herschel Walker will end up pulling through, but I think it will be very close, probably by about half a point. There were some scandals about Herschel Walker that came out. A couple things, I'll throw some articles up there. But it doesn't really seem to have affected him too much. And coupled with the fact that he did have a very solid debate performance, besides that one instance where he whips out his badge, but I mean, besides that, he overall had a pretty solid debate performance, really exceeded expectations for a lot of people. But he came out and he did what he had to do, and I think that people largely were unaffected by the scandals that did come out for him. We have a more recent poll here from Trafalgar, and it has Walker up by 2. Same time here, there is one right below it that has Warnock up by 2. So obviously, it's incredibly close. We can check out what 538 says, take it with a grain of salt, but even 538 has it being around a 1-point gap there, 53 to 47, which is pretty similar to what they did say about Nevada as well. It's very much up in the air. 538 has also changed their tune in terms of, about a month or two ago, they said that Democrats had a 70% chance of taking the Senate. And since then, it's tightened up to about 55-45, which even that's pretty generous, averaging out at about a 50-50, which if I had to guess would just be them not handing Pennsylvania, Georgia, or Arizona to the Republicans. But even then, they've largely been very inaccurate, which I can discuss in videos if anyone, wants any further evidence. I can go through it. But they have not been favorable toward conservatives, and even here, it's showing it's very, very even, which in layman's term means that it's going to be a red wave year. It's different for the House, but that's also going to be a separate video. Even here in terms of Florida, which I did discuss before, they have Marco Rubio up by 8.5 points, which he's going to end up winning by probably 12 or 10. So, you can see the difference there. We have one last state, and that's Arizona. And this one is a bit interesting. Mark Kelly ran as a moderate. He won a special election in 2020. And unfortunately, he's been all but moderate. He's voted with Joe Biden almost every single time. And, the Arizona voters, they are largely conservative, but they're more of the old-fashioned conservative. There are a growing number of America First conservatives. Carrie Lake is doing very well there, which, of course, doesn't help the left in terms of Katie Hobbs being a terrible candidate and refusing to even debate her, which, once again, is another video, which I will get to. But with Blake Masters and Mark Kelly, Blake Masters is not receiving the proper funding, and that's Mitch McConnell's fault completely. Mitch McConnell is not giving him the proper funding, which he is giving to most other races in terms of the Senate races. He's not giving Blake Masters the funding. He needs more funding. He needs more ad space, more ads out there. It's not happening. And ultimately, I think it's going to be Blake Masters' own party that's going to be sabotaging him here. That's going to be the reason why he doesn't win, is that he's not getting proper funding. I think he's doing really well. I think he's going up further in the polls. If you look at 538, it's about a 3.8 gap there. But it's just, I think Blake Masters had a very solid debate performance. I think he did very well. Mark Kelly was not able to justify many clear flaws in his campaign. In terms of immigration even, we're on a border that's completely open, and Mark Kelly's defending the policies of Joe Biden. He's defending the presidency of Joe Biden, who's allowing hundreds of thousands of immigrants going across the southern border as a whole. It's not working out for him. I think Blake Masters is getting it closer and closer. And when it comes down to it, there's polls here, 538 said 3.8. It's not going to be 3.8. I think Blake Masters is doing a great job. Unfortunately, what I think, and I think it will go down to the wire, I think it's going to be his own party that's going to prevent him from winning. I think it's going to end up being probably a 0.3, 0.4, maybe even 0.5% gap here. But I do think that Mark Kelly might actually survive this one. I could be wrong, and believe me, I'd like to be wrong, but ultimately it falls on McConnell and that old-fashioned conservative leadership that is holding behind younger, fresher, newer voices like Blake Masters, like Herschel Walker, like all these other candidates, J.D. Vance, and more, in terms of gunner races. Like Doug Mastriano is not receiving much funding from, I don't think any funding from McConnell either, while he's funneling a ton of money into races like Oklahoma, which is kind of a waste of time, to be honest with you. I mean, Oklahoma's Oklahoma. There's not really too much you can say about it. It might be a little bit closer this year with some polls that I've seen, but it's not going anywhere. McConnell needs to get with it or basically back down and back out. But as it stands, we're 2 weeks out, and it's looking like we're going to have a 52-48 majority for the Republicans in the Senate. That is enough to get over tiebreaker Harris. That's going to be enough to basically get through there. John Fetterman, Mark Kelly, Raphael Warnock, these candidates that are being propped up, they're not campaigning on issues that really align with people. People want good education. People want secure borders. People don't like crime that's been going up, in numbers that we haven't seen in very long time, if ever, in the last couple of years especially. People don't align with all this, and instead of focusing on the issues at hand, they're talking about January 6th. They're talking about identity politics and gender and things that a majority of Americans, want to supply food for their family. They want to, make sure that they have enough money to really survive. They care about gas prices. And this election should be a lesson for the Democrats to maybe ease off of the quote woke policies, but maybe more toward what their roots originally were. This should send a clear message that their current platform is not going to work, and running on that platform is not salvageable for them. They can't keep going on like this, which is a shame for them. But hopefully, with what we see here and what's going on in the future, that the country will make its way back on track and focus on the people, focus on getting the issues that people care about through, like tackling inflation, like getting more strict on crime, like protecting the border. And hopefully we can see that going into 2023 with this new Republican Senate, Republican majority Senate. So I think that's going to be it for today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe for more. I'm going to discuss a House prediction as well as a governor prediction before the election. Maybe a couple other things here and there. But that's what's up next for us. I hope you enjoyed, and take care.